People who developed film. What's the most shocking thing you saw on a customer's camera? Used to work at a drugstore photo department. I always heard stories from other coworkers about sick shit they had to report. But I think the worst, saddest for me were quite a few orders with photos to be used in legal cases involving beat-up little kids. Proof photos and shots of text conversations with parents throwing accusations. It was all awful. The most interesting might be a woman in her late 20s or early 30s who would take hundreds of photos of her topless or nude. Some were selfies, some with different men, some doing shit like gardening or posing under local bridges. Just stacks on stacks of her breasts. The weirdest photo was in a very small order that had pictures of a few men hunting together at some cabin or lodge or something. Some pictures of them and of snowy tree lines, and then one solitary photo in the middle of a fucking Sasquatch. It looked so unreal it may have been a painting? I still don't know. It was just one. Standing in the center of the photo. In front of some trees in the snow. I'm sure it was some kind of art or something. But it also fed my undying need to come across UFO photos during the 2 years I worked there. I didn't loudly crying. I was told this story secondhand. A friend of mine worked in a camera shop. When staff were bringing out a developed photo set, you would call out the customer's name to come up. Well, one day 2 people had the same name. He groaned, called it out, and this old woman came up and asked which was hers. My friend told her to take a look in set A, and if it is not hers to take set B. She says okay, opens it up and screams. He runs over and takes a look. The first photo was of an orgy in a forest. When I was a photo tech for Walgreens, one of our regular customers sent in a print order through the website. The customer was 50-something, short and round, and half the pics in her order were collages of her gaping, lubed up butthole, cheeks spread wide apart. Not a film developer, but used to repair mobile phones, so still saw hundreds if not thousands of personal pics. Not on purpose, but just because we used to have to manually back up pictures. The most shocking was this 60-plus-year-old woman in a gangbang. She had a distinctive tattoo on her shoulder which I noticed when she picked up the phone and in the pics. When I was like 5 or 6, I took a picture of my penis with my sister's Pikachu camera. My very first dick pic, so whoever developed that roll got to look at all 151 Pokémon framing my penis. I worked for Walgreens for a while when film was still a thing. Child porn came through more times than you would think. Obviously you get stuff like shots of kids playing in the bathtub or in their bathing suits or whatever. That's fine. You can tell it's just for fun. CP always had these kids looking dead behind the eyes or upset. I thankfully never saw an actual assault. But just posed nude photos. But still. When I was a kid, my sister and I used disposable cameras we got for a vacation to take pictures of each other's bits. We were like 6 and 7 and very confused about why we never got those photos back after we turned the cameras in to have them developed. Several decades later, I'm just thankful my parents weren't sent to jail. Skeptical smiley face. A friend of mine worked at Walgreens developing photos during high school. He said the best set of photos was of a child's birthday party. A few photos in the middle of the parents having sex and top-down views of a blowjob. And then the continuation of the child's birthday party. Edit, as another user pointed out below. For those too young to understand how film works, this means the sex and blowjob must have happened during the party. Edit 2, thanks for my award. For those too young to understand how film works, this means the sex and blowjob must have happened during the party. Sounds like the kid wasn't the only one getting a present. My ex-wife used to develop film. Told me about a longtime customer that came in and dropped off a roll of film to be developed. The guy was an avid photographer. And would have several rolls developed weekly. She called the police when several images of child porn became clear on this particular day. Police ask her to stall the guy when he comes in to pick up the pictures. She does so. Guy gets arrested and says something to the effect of that he usually developed those at home. And must have mixed up the roll of film with another one that he thought wasn't child porn when he brought it in. Seems he'd been doing this for years. Guy got hit with multiple felonies. And got a very long prison sentence. My ex was a little traumatized by it. She told me she felt horrible that she wasn't able to stop him earlier. I mean, there was no way for her to have known. But she felt responsible somehow. This actually happened quite recently. An old lady came in with her late son's camera and a dozen of discs that she wanted to check if there would be anything in them. The first couple of discs had some old albums on them. The next 6 or so were full of porn from the 90s. I didn't have the heart to tell this old lady who was over 80 years old that she was in possession of her late son's porn collection. She even gave me a tip for being helpful. Not quite the same, but my buddy worked as an RA last year, and after all the residents left for winter break, they'd have to check all the rooms to make sure the fridges were unplugged. He went into a room and spread all over the desk were Polaroids of the 2 female roommates and all their friends naked. Buddy didn't know that to think. But their fridge was unplugged. Couple taking sexy photos, woman in a leotard with her pussy lips hanging out. Boob shots too. Look like they were taken in a cheap hotel. Other half of the roll was the family photos from Disney. Woman in the photo picked up the prince. Edit, also got some cockfighting photos. But since they were south of the border, nothing we could do. I've been doing the job for about 3 years now. As long as it's not illegal, we will develop it. Never got anything that could be considered illegal, but we get nudity somewhat often. I'd say about half of it is meh. 20% being really good on the eyes. 20% of I wish I didn't see that, and the last 10% being I really wish I didn't see that. But I'd say the most shocking thing is when a former mortician brought in 35mm slides to be scanned. And they were all crime scene and bodies on an autopsy table type photos of extremely gory things. Gunshot wounds. Exposed insides. Cut off heads. ECT. I couldn't get through it and passed it off to my other lab guy. It didn't bother him as much. But he couldn't stare directly at the screen either. I can't remember what the exact excuse of why he needed them digitized. But I think it was something like educational purposes for others learning to be morticians? I was still kinda new at the time. And today I wouldn't accept that order. I would tell him to go to a crime lab instead. It was honestly one of the worst experiences in my life. I can't even handle gory movies. Edit, another fun story. One of the first negative strips I scanned, it was 2 frames long, was one of a guy's GF just spread eagle on the bed, in the next frame a raccoon eating trash out of the garbage bin. He wanted photos of both. I am an electronics repairer. Mostly focused on phones. I also refurbish broken phones to resell them. It always surprises me how little people care about their privacy and personal data. I have received phones for repairing containing personal data of every kind. I had to back up notes with passwords. Intimate photos. Open bank accounts. Closing parenthesis dot. When a phone for reselling has personal info, I usually just do a reset and forget about it. It doesn't feel moral to me to take a look at someone's private stuff. However, once, the woman who had sold me her phone contacted me. She explained to me she needed to recover the pictures, audio recordings and videos on her phone at all cost. She seemed really concerned about it. When I was doing the backup into a USB stick, I took a peek and realized why she wanted that so badly. All that media were the evidences of her husband's violent domestic abuse. I cannot express with words how shocked and powerless I felt. Up to the point of just bursting into tears. I couldn't get that out of my head for days. I worked at a camera store all through college and saw a little but of everything. My favorites, 1. Biker rally photos are the craziest shit you will ever see. Like a bottle of whiskey in a metal hammock connected to a dude's scrotum rings as he walked around bare-ass naked. And for anyone that thinks it's all hot girls that flash their boobs for a camera, it is not. Never get those images out of your head. 2. Crime scene photos for the local PD were rough. We didn't do many, mostly just when they needed photos immediately, but those are hard. The worst is when you can't tell what's going on in the negatives, and when the prints come out you realize you've been staring at the inside of a van after someone blew their head off with a shotgun. 3. Okay. Now for the funniest. Sweet-looking late-20s attractive woman brings in 4 rolls of film. She had on one of those teacher sweaters with the little schoolhouse. ABCs. 1 + 1 = 2. All that. So I assume she's an elementary school teacher. Didn't think anything of it. 4 rolls of this woman getting slammed in everything sexual position you can imagine by a dude that looked like he was 10 feet tall and hung like a moose. 2 hours later, Moosecock himself walks in to pick up the photos. I realize after he leaves. The pics at the beginning they had their clothes on. The same clothes that they were wearing when they came into the store. Maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe these people had just got done with what could only have been a 6-hour fuck marathon and ran immediately to the camera store to develop the film. Worked for a few years in a shop that developed films and printed digital photos. Lots of disposables from school trips etc. And a lot of the film was fairly normal. Digital prints were where the fun was. Aside from people who couldn't put files onto usable medium for printing. There were the people who had lots of photos on usable medium. I remember this one lady who wanted some wedding photos printing. Her son had given her an SD card with the photos on from his phone. Unfortunately our machines loaded every image file it could find. Mother was not pleased to find her son's porn collection in the middle of a shop, with a young'un helping her load then up. Can't think of any others at the moment due to it being a few years ago now. But if I think of any more I'll share. I've got a good one. Doesn't completely fit the question but here goes. In 6th grade one discovered porn and had more than a few photos and videos on my phone. One day we got to do this cool project at school where we could pick any song we like and make a mini music video and also use photos if we wanted. If we had a phone we were allowed to transfer it to the teacher's computer so she could check if the music and photos were okay to use. Well, it's my turn to start transferring photos and music. The music goes well without a hitch, but here comes the mistake. I transferred every single photo and video to the teacher's computer somehow. I remember the lump in my throat and all the blood rushing to my face when I saw what I had done. As I'm frantically deleting all the photos and videos one by one, I'm a silly goose. I know nothing about computers. The tech nerd of the class comes over to ask if I need help because I'm taking a while. I try to hide it but it's too late. I knew he saw but he didn't say anything. He just took the mouse and proceeded to delete everything I transferred to the computer. Then he helped me transfer the right photo to the teacher's computer. Jared, if you're reading this, I love you. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and hit the notification button. See you next time.